All right, welcome everybody. All right, let's see. Just gonna show you guys something. I had to wake up to this moron today. I've ignored this guy for a while, but I'm about ready to give him the block. I never block people on Facebook, but this guy is constantly trying to start stuff. And it's just the same retarded arguments. So, where am I? Capture. This guy, Matthew Porchelli. This guy tried to come on the other day arguing that we can Orthodox concede the filioque. This guy's always just a tool, dude. I just ignore him. I don't think he ever watches any of or listens to any of these arguments. He made a stupid comment on when I was announcing the debate. I'm like, watch it. Like, I'll address the arguments. Then I interviewed Garby. Guarantee you he didn't watch that either. The Catholic Church teaches that Muslims, though lacking the fullness of divine revelation in Christ and the Trinity, nonetheless direct their worship to the one true God, the Creator of all, acknowledging His oneness, omnipotence, and mercy, while it understands greatly incomplete. What a dumb position, dude. Well, so did. I mean, what about Satanists? They're like, well, the one true God's actually Satan. He's one, he's omnipotent, and he's the merciful one, you see. This is how stupid Roman Catholicism is. I mean, while their understanding is greatly incomplete, it's not directed to a false deity. We have all kinds of quotes saying they worship demons and not the true God. Look at this. Well, I'll go in just a second. I'm going to block this guy. I'm tired of this stupidity. Incorrigible, dude. I mean, here's the thing. I'm going to point this out. Keep it up, dude. You guys are the best apologists for orthodoxy. Do you know that we have 2 people coming to our church that, because of the debate, because of how stupid this Roman Catholic position is, that want nothing to do with Roman Catholicism anymore, because of your dumb position here. So yeah, I like, congratulations. This is a hill they're gonna die on. They just got things incorrect, but they're worshiping the same God because there's only one God. We know what Roman Catholics believe about this. They're wrong. That's the point.
It said Roman Catholic.
Here, how did I know he was going to do this? Patriarch Theophilus, Patriarch Theodore, Metropolitan. First of all, I'd like to see the quotes in the context. I know what the patriarchs had said in terms of politics and being diplomatic in areas where there's issues about Islam. Dummy. Oh, well, here we go. GOARC and AFR. Sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't realize the Ecumenical Council of AFR. Quotes St. Paul, like, put St. Palamas in, saint, right? See. retarded, dude. On the Muslims, they have turned away from the true light and embraced a shadow, calling it God. But it's not whom we worship. So you're quoting Alma saying the opposite. Well, I just found that. And then St. John Chrysostom on the Jews. No Jew worships God. I mean, he's talking about the, not the ancient Hebrew Jews, but who says this? He's talking about the apostates. The Son of God does. Where he says, if you knew my Father, you would also know me, but neither do you know me, nor do you know my Father. What more trustworthy testimony can I offer than this? Therefore, if they are ignorant of the Father, have crucified the Son, and rejected the help of the Spirit, who would not confidently declare that their place is a haunt of demons. So, these guys just can't understand ecclesia. I said, you're incapable of understanding Orthodox ecclesia. I mean, truly amazing me. Unlike Rome, that dogmatized this position. Personal opinions and theologumena and political diplomatic statements made by patriarchs to keep peace in their nations are not dogma. Only synods and councils can declare dogma. And only ecumenical councils are infallible. You know, individual bishops are subject to the synod. They can't bind without a synod. These guys, they don't care. And then you point out, they're like, it's all for thee, none for me fallacy. The point is that you like to attack objective teaching with contradictory opinions. Well, first of all, yes, there isn't an ecumenical council dogmatizing this. I never even said it was dogmatized. I just said it's wrong. And it's not the phronema of the church. But notice with Roman Catholics, what did that guy say the other day to me? Using your mind as Protestant. So you need an ecumenical council or a pope to tell you if something's like wrong. Remember, that's the confusion of how things are settled versus how do you know something. You sent your best, some of your best Roman Catholic philosophers. They lost the debate. The audience, even among Roman Catholics, realized they lost the debate. And all you're going to get is just the fanboys like, rah, rah, rah from my team. On the other side, which always happens. But it's just, I mean, this is the hill they're going to do. Like, great. More converts to our side because you're stupid position. Anyways, I do whether I respond or just block. I'm tired of. Oh, did I put your? I hate when I do that. Where did I put your? Where did I put? I'm not seeing where. Am I blind? Maybe. Where did you say I put? I'm so sick and tired of this audio stuff, problems. One, two, three. Why would it be done? Why would it be normal and then start echoing? Why is it? That doesn't make any sense. It's fine now. I'm telling you, it's a demon, dude. It gets into. All right, what was he like? I hate making grammar mistakes, so somebody said, "Oh, oh, I think I know what's going on. It's when I share the screen." Now I can't even find somebody that made the comment about that I used the word your, Y-O-U-R instead of you are. You got me. Well played. You totally got me. Well, you know how you get people? You get them on things that they're actually like concerned about. Like that's something I would actually be concerned about, making a grammar mistake. And so you could actually get me on that, and you did. So, touche, Zane. I have an idea though. That's why I had an audio input. Now listen to it. Now listen to how good. All right. One last comma. I never said. None of us said that it is the official position of the. How about R instead of just me? It's not me. Oh, yeah. None of us. spell phronema? Is that how to spell phronema? I feel like that's not. Phronema? Phronema? Help me out. Phronema? Phronema. Yeah, that's right. About that. None of us said that it's the official position of the since there is no ecumenical account that dogmatizes this. Our position is that it is wrong to say Christians and Muslims worship the same God, which is proven both philosophically and through the consensus of the fathers. Did I put both? I can't do both, huh? Because I put 3. I do that sometimes. Just gotta What do you say? Block them? How about block? I'll be danged if you come on my channel and his other profile. You have other profiles? Okay. That goes gone though, isn't it? Because I had 2. I've been really patient with that guy. Remember I brought up with Gerby, like, this objection, like, that it's like, we found patriarchs that said something to the opposite. Oh, wow, Noah Strong, good. He's lying about ancient faith, saying the same God. Yeah, post the link. They lie. They're like, these people are liars. We're constantly catching them lie. Yeah, Rip, we've talked about as society devolves, it gets hard, especially how crazy like the world is today, that it gets more and more difficult to tell what's sarcastic from reality because the world's absurd. I was talking with a friend, the dear friend I grew up with, and I'm like, another buddy I'd mentioned the same thing to that we grew up with, that if I had a time machine and went back to my old self and be like, I want to tell you what 2025 is like. There's a transformer movement. Public schools are encouraging kids to mutilate themselves and chemically castrate, and they have the highest suicide rate. The world's gone crazy. Everybody's on SSRIs and drugs, psychotropics. Let me tell you about this thing called the COOF that's coming out in 2020 and the PSYOP they do there that literally breaks people. 5 years later, people are still wearing N95 masks. Totally gone insane. And now these people are being interviewed. I don't know if I talked about this. I keep joking. Do you know that there's a whole it particularly fairly large in the LGBT and the woke. They wear the N95 masks and they're asked about like, well, those don't work, or like, why do you wear them? It has nothing to do with like um any health reasons or anything like that. It's literally become a uniform. I don't know if you know about this. You could go on to like I guess they're on Instagram. There's whole groups, maskers, and like one of my Christians says, it broke people. Koof broke, and I'm like, people are actually, you see them in the protests, right? They're always wearing the mask. Like, even the mainstream media and stuff, like, those don't work. You know what I mean? Well, they're not wearing them for health reasons or to be courteous to others. It's actually a uniform now. It's actually a scene. It's a whole movement, aesthetic. Can you imagine me going back to my 18-year-old self in 1996 and be like, this is what the world's going to look like? Do you know what's really crazy? I found this picture of 1995, 96 was a rave. Now, what's really cool about this picture is like a bunch of us in this picture are actually Orthodox now. You guys see, it's so ridiculous. Forgive me that I was stupid and went to these things, but when I was younger. The funny thing though, even at like 18 years old, I actually got a thought that I was like, I think this thing's a CIA psyop. I think the rave scene is like total CIA sponsored psyop. Um, there's something really interesting in this picture. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, I had made mistakes, whatever, I was dumb. Where is this picture? Yeah. So this picture here, this New Year's Rave, 1996. And they were already prepping people for, look at the masks. And isn't that weird? It's a foreshadow of things, awful things to come. They're already psyoping people into be like, wear the masks. Isn't that crazy? An actual photo, yeah. What's crazy is that I don't even know who took that. I'm thinking it was my friend Doug, because like I said, 3 or 4 of the people in that picture are Orthodox now. He's Orthodox, but he's not in the photos, because I'm wondering, it can't just be some random. This was in where is it where the Lakers play now? It was the before. Shoot, is it where the Lakers or the Clippers play? I can't remember. Um, Before they built that stadium, it was the LA Convention Center. That's where it was huge. Anyways, it couldn't have been a random like most of the people I don't even know who's in that photo. So it must have been one of my friends that took that. Yeah, those I'll tell you what actually with the masks. So they were on ecstasy, Molly. And then what they did with the mask, they put Vix Vapor Rub in and it like increases the senses of and the experience, like the ecstasy experience. That's why they were actually wearing those Vix Vapor Rub. What a weird. And who's the first person to figure that out? I put Vix. I bet it was somebody that had like a cold or something, and then like they took ecstasy and then like put Vicks Vapor Rub and was like, oh, and then it evolved, or it was the CIA. No, people had gas masks. I kid you not. Like people even had masks on. Like I remember seeing that too. That was a scene. Okay, now why did I originally bring that up? Oh, you were asking about the inability and the difficulty to determine between sarcasm and. Well, look how crazy our world is. And if you told me like, oh, also in the future, there's a rapper named Kanye, um, who's singing songs praising Tiny Mustache, I'd be like, no, there's no way. Think about like how crazy if you actually told people what the world in 2025 would be like. And then we saw my my dear friends lecture on the ethics of advancing biotechnologies. That's crazy. Like what biohacks, um, you can grow basically uh because some of these I wish that I had my class I had them speak in some of the classes, and there was other things we're talking about where they're at bio in terms of biotechnologies. They can grow babies out of an arm, right? You don't need a womb. And so there was a whole conversation about like artificially grown um, babies, just totally like the Matrix now. What did it say? People are not born, they're grown. And then they're pretty close to basically we're not too far off from so you know like Elon Musk Neuralink, um they basically designed, and you can have this on your phone, your iWatch or something like that, and it basically does kind of like a MRI, so uh it can read your brain activity, and then through AI probably I expect this is how it works, that they get enough people, that they're doing MRIs while they're thinking, like think this thought, say this, and stuff like that. Well, they can map brain activity to certain thoughts and words and stuff like that, so that um, basically you get AI through these neural links to basically read your thoughts. So once you get enough data in to look, this is what happens in the brain when you think this way, think certain thoughts, then it becomes really easy to just predict, um, well, yeah, this is what the person's thinking once you have AI start reading and doing an MRI. Can you believe we have that? Uh, right now, these companies, excuse me, are some of these big companies that only elites are paying for, say they can, uh, designer babies that you can genetically design uh, and raise IQ points by 5 or 6. He was saying that he think that's probably a stretch. They're probably not there, and they're probably stretching that for marketing purposes. But the whole one of the premises and points behind the whole talk was, but it's advancing so fast. So what was the Human Genome Project supposed to take like 10 years, and it looked like we cracked it in a couple. Um, you know, once we map out all the proteins and stuff, like that's when this, you could basically create immune resistant humans, superhumans, high intelligence, pick the eye color and stuff like that. Like, so they're almost there. So people might be like, whoa, they've been saying this for a long time. It's like, yeah, but you don't understand how fast it's emerging. It's exponential. So they're going to be there. Blade Runner, yeah. Yeah, sorry. Yay, yay. I can call him whatever I want. What would be another crazy thing if you told my 18-year-old self in 1996 what 2025 would be like? Deep fakes, that would blow my mind. The whole deep fakes. Um, I think a lot of the conspiracies that were shown to be true, I think that would blow my mind. I'd be like, no, I just, it was such a naive period in the 90s and 80s that I just don't think I would have the conceptual hardware to even process. I think somebody's totally insane if they said, today I had the frog. Yesterday I didn't, it went away. Let me answer Cleve to Antiquities question, then I'll go to Andrew Muller's. Dave Flippian donates $10. A regular contributor. Thank you, David. Cleve the Antiquity. Good to see you yesterday. I don't know who the guy you had on. He was did you have a guy who was reformed on you were interviewing, but there was forgive me, I didn't stay on long. I went on real quick. But what I found interesting, I believe that was an icon of St. Paul in the background. Is that correct? Like it's like I was just kind of shocked to see somebody who's reformed have an icon. Cool. I mean, maybe he's um now I came out of Lutheranism before I converted, so I didn't have any problems with icons or Mary. Although I obviously, probably rightfully so, thought that, Roman Catholics had an incorrect view of Mary. But perpetual virginity, like that, I didn't have any problem with that. That wasn't. So it's kind of weird to see different Protestant sects, like the things they have issues with, that I can't really relate to because it's like I came out of a different tradition. Anyways, uh, yeah, 1 second. I think how are just gonna pull up a book real quick. I mean, obviously, I have Father Seraphim Rose's Soul After Death, but this one's also a good How Our Departed Live. I think, I mean, it's not quite clear. Um, it's not perfectly spelled out. Um, I'd say the scriptural basis is the notion of final judgment implies there's judgments before then. Now we have to say, distinguish it. It isn't purgatory. Has nothing to do. I think on the surface, people might think that. So, um, I think from scripture, just certain kind of principles and general kind of deductions what would follow. Well, if there's a final judgment, it means there's particular judgments before. And demons are accusers. So the judgments, they're making judgments on. I'd also say that as far as like kind of time periods, it follows there's kind of a biblical basis. 3 days in the tomb. Um, there is there's 9 days. Is another significant day. And that isn't explicitly spelled out in scripture, other than it maps onto the notion of kind of angelic hierarchies, because it says God is surrounded by the cherubim and seraphim. And so, gee whiz, forgive me. Angels are messengers too, so they take our petitions right up to God, and God's messages back down to us through kind of a ranking and hierarchy. And so there is some biblical basis of the 9 days. Now it's not, we just mark it from our side, the living, not like it's not literally 9 days, like because obviously time on the other side is very different. The tradition is that it's 9 days, right? And then you go and everybody beholds the Holy Trinity. And then 40 days on earth, finding its final place, is theologically significant to Christ after the resurrection on earth for 40 days before the ascension. So there's some general, and you could just say it's you get in trouble when you get into the particularities, because it's like we don't know, like what. So there's a theological significance to this, and so the idea is also you have a guardian angel that accompanies you, right? Which would make sense as you're going through, I guess, would be the toll houses, going up the 9. You have demons accusing, which makes sense that they would do do that, and your angel defending you and guiding you up. But the idea is death is conquered. So it's, for all a demon can do now is create fear. So I believe that's what it's like. They're accusing you to get you to have fear, right? The most repeated verse in scripture is "Fear not." Our Lord has conquered death. So all they can do is distract you from, and I think that's kind of what's going on. Patristic sources a lot of these are people that had experiences and came back and reported that tends to fit what the toll houses are. But it's, I mean, again, like you have to pay it, like it's an analogy. It's not literal, like you're on the river having to pay tolls to go through. They're just, demons are making judgments about, like, and trying to get you to have fear that you're dead. And that's basically, I'm not an expert on the toll houses, but I think you're safe if you just stay kind of in those generalities about like the theological significance. What would that mean? But yeah, Ephesians 6:12. It's interesting. The Roman Catholic bishop here, Bishop Vetter, was speaking to one of the classes, and somebody had asked a question about purgatory. I wasn't interrupting him because it was his deal, whatever. It's his college, like, because it's a Dyson college. But it's interesting, they have this kind of, it is really kind of like a scales and legalistic kind of model. So he was saying, well, look, when he used an analogy, now this isn't our position, I'm telling you what the Roman Catholic position is, and then contrasting that uh you could be forgiven of a sin, but a payment, like there's like a cosmic imbalance almost, and payments, a debt has to be paid. uh Sort of like you could be forgiven for vehicular manslaughter by family, but like legally, right, the debt still has to be, somebody has to be sentenced to, and something has, time has to be, to set things, Eustace, right, just sort of straight right again. So they have a very legalistic and kind of understanding of this, and the Bishop Vetter here said, well, it's like, imagine if a kid threw a rock and broke a window, then went and apologized and was forgiven. They'd be expected to pay and fix the window to set things right. So it's not just enough to now, I would say from orthodoxy, like, yeah, it's not enough to just, part of changing your mind is putting it in action. But I wouldn't say that's to set the universe like a legalistic. That's part of what repentance is whatever I did, I'm trying to make right. I'm not, it's not just cognitive. But his considered kind of different, that it's, that was more kind of legalistic, and he said, well, purgatory is like that, you're forgiven, but um you know uh, uh the universe has to be set right, you have to spend time in purgatory, and they become more kind of general, and general, like, about what purgatory is. Like, they've kind of moved from it like being or loosened up, I think, on, does it have to be a torment of some sort that you, like, a fire or something, like, I think they've kind of changed their position on that. Anyways, that's not the when we talk about the toll house, like, that's not, you're not paying stuff off and setting the, that's why um there can be some upward mobility before the final judgment, means that's it. When all is made all, you are who you are. Now, the saints describe, and even in scripture, what death is like is they can't pray for themselves, right? And so they're separated from the church militant in some sense. And so they must be mystically united to that, so that our prayers as they help us here on earth also can help them. Like, so if I pray for you and you can be affected by that in a positive way, there's some mobility even in this life through our prayers, and the prayers of a righteous man availeth much. So that's why, one of the reasons why we pray for the dead, first of all, is just to keep in communion, um, um, to give them comfort and love. It's a way that, God is a God of the living, not the dead. Not even death can separate us from the love of God. So we're united in Christ and his love, and our prayers comfort the dead. And for those in the church, because they can't do anything anymore, and you see this in scripture, like among a deaf man, a mute can't speak, right? There's um they can't of themselves make any more progress even before the final judgment. And so our prayers, and that probably has something to do with even in the toll houses too, help them. At what degree, we don't know. Like, this again, we get a few glimpses, reports from saints that had died and come back and kind of reported. We have Saint Lazarus, um, and the traditions about what he saw. And so a lot of it's just speculative. Again, I think you're safe to just stay at those kind of generalities. You get into trouble when you get into the specifics of exactly, or if you link it to kind of like indulgences and purgation and stuff like that, and a kind of a legalistic. So, all right, good question. Noah Strong, $20, thank you. What were your most pressing questions for you when you first were being catechized? I'm having trouble coming up with questions to ask. I feel like I'm being too rational is my problem, and I should just try to experience it. That's a good question. I'm trying to put because it was so long ago. This was like 2012. Um, I probably approached it too rationally. Um, I probably had questions about like how synods and council. I remember that. I remember things that I was because I was coming out of Protestantism and a Lutheran reacting to Roman Catholicism. I had questions about we have a kind of paranoia about like Roman Mariology and stuff like that. And so I definitely had questions about things looked sometimes Roman Catholic to me, the way they venerated uh, Theotokos and say, Theotokos, save us. You were my only salvation, my hope, comfort, stuff like that. That I was like, that's weird. So I definitely had questions about the distinctions between the Roman Catholic view and Mary and ours. Like icons. Um, Again, I wasn't an iconoclast, but I, I basically approached it as kind of religious art that it's like, oh, it's useful in my worship. I didn't really kind of understand the theology of the icon, nor did I understand the mystical union as like with the saints through the matter of the icon. That there were actually divine energies and the icons could do like that seemed weird to me. Um, Trying to think what other issues. Didn't have a lot. What's really funny is one of my godsons, when he was coming in, I sat down, I'm like, do you have any issues or questions? He's like, nope. He's like, it all sounds good. I was like, that's amazing. Most people have some. Um, Probably the role of government, Orthodox view, because unfortunately I was an anarcho-libertarian, and I kind of tried to force the fathers and stuff into um, I was pro-evolutionist, theistic evolution. Like, so I probably had a lot of those kinds of questions. But yeah, just absorbing. I think it was a lot easier for me too because the amount of we were broken. Like we were utterly. I was at my soul's and wits end, going through what we had with my wife's disability and just our kind of loneliness and brokenness that I was able to put me in a really unique position that in some sense, even though I had this intellectual baggage, didn't provide too much of an obstacle because just when you're broken, it's like philosophies and these ideas, they really don't mean much. And so I was able to um absorb a lot. I was just open. I was just like, I'm done. I'm ready to whatever the church has to So even with the things that kind of rub me the wrong way, like you mean like the saints are actually working through icons. I was like, and the way that the Orthodox venerated Mary and stuff like that. Um, I accepted it. I was like, just felt weird and uncomfortable. That's all. Um, what were the reasons gave up evolution? Well, I just started absorbing the phronema of the church. I think I specialize in philosophy of science. My PhD, I was really a science idolater. Just thought science was the bee's knees, and it took me some time to kind of just reflect on some of these issues and just see what a mess science through history has been. Uh, how science can't actually get to knowledge. Um, I think also doing research on later on various things, how things were funded and corruption in science, that and like the financiers behind like Huxley and the Darwinists and stuff like that, um, made me kind of like question. Obviously, it wasn't a Darwinian. I was I think I subscribed to something. It's called Evo Devo. It's like between. It's like a modification on punctuated equilibrium. Uh, but I think some of the I just I couldn't find it in the church. Like I couldn't find the more that I thought about. I had to. It was the same thing with kind of anarcho-libertarianism. Like I had to force this idea onto, and it just got more and more difficult to argue that this was actually the case. And I think the hardest problem too that I just couldn't get over, and you just had to do all these mental gymnastics, is there was no death prior to the fall. So I had to do all this mental gymnastics, and I'm like, this can't be the way that it is. It's exactly what kind of led to my conversion to, like, before I was Orthodox, I was like constructing this system. I'm like, okay, you have to have, synods and, uh, authority, bishops. Okay, I get that. Okay, and you have to have the real like I was constructing this system, but it's not going to be Orthodox or Roman Catholic, but it has a hit like, and I was just like the mental gymnastics in the word. I'm like, there's no way that a person has to do this from themselves to get and figure this stuff out. And there was just a violence, I think, an intellectual violence that it was just unnatural. And I think that um I know how I answered that. I remember I never argued that man descended from apes, but that apes and man had a common ancestor. Um, but still, I guess you'd have to say there was some sort of hominoid that wasn't an ape but wasn't man, that man descended from, that didn't have. I do think that I argued that there was a special act of creation which God breathed, but it's like so. But then your mom and dad, Adam and Eve's mom and dad. Oh, I'm trying to remember how I argued this, because I don't even think I said that Adam and Eve's mom and dad were hominoids, non-human hominoids. I think I actually believe that that there was a material basis, um, which is true. I mean, you see it in like it doesn't have to be evolution. That um, there's a created order of the way you read in Genesis, what's created first, like the elements and water, right? then plants, then animals, then human beings, because human beings are composed of all those kinds of elements. I think, if I remember, because it's a long time ago, forgive me, that uh, I believe that the hominoids were a material basis, but they didn't birth Adam and Eve. That I believe that I thought that God actually did a special act of creation. But metaphysically speaking, the material basis were there existing in the world before. So yeah, because I knew how absurd that sounded. Like, Adam and Eve's parents were beasts. So I argued they weren't. That they weren't born of a hominoid. That God had did a special act of creation from. I think that's what. But I couldn't get around I just, as hard as I tried, but like death prior to the fall, because evolution presupposes that there's death um prior to the fall. Like I just, but do you see why I didn't argue that they were born of beasts or hominoids? I don't think it was the only theistic evolution that said, like, I think a lot of people realized how absurd that was and would say, well, that's the act of special create, because you see in Genesis that God actually breathes the soul into. So I did believe that. That God did a special act of creation and it wasn't completely natural evolution. Like, it's just the material basis that evolved up to that point in the world, that there were hominoids that existed that. Yeah, a spiritual. Yeah, there's all kinds of ad hoc. Well, actually, what? Now, first of all, how would you know that? But they actually die. They physically die, and they were meant to live physically for forever. They were protected in the garden, which Jardin, like, is a protected area too. So that I think um, it doesn't make any sense to say, well, only could be spiritual. Also, that's Gnostic. Spiritual and material things are not disconnected. Spiritual things affect. If you watch Prawn, it will spiritually affect you and actually physically affect you. So you can't separate those two. So I wouldn't even allow that. Also, because we know Adam and Eve died, and human beings are a macrocosm of, they embrace the whole universe, like both in terms of physical elements, but metaphysically as well. Right? They are the pinnacle of creation and they embrace, so that when man falls and brings in death, death enters into all the other lower material categories. Yeah, he says physical. Well, first of all, you have to say that physical death is natural, then, which is absurd. God created things for them to be destroyed. What a stupid, not my God. I don't know what God you're talking about. Um, but that's the point, though. Adam and Eve weren't physically going to die, but the action that they, so it's not just spiritual. They actually physically died because of their sin, right? And if man is a macrocosm and embraces the whole, then death enters into all the lower parts through that action, which means there was no physical death in the material world prior to that. Yeah, and it's originism too. That's the other. Um, God's like a distant God. Now I remember ways of arguing this. I'm like, well, I can have secondary causation, stuff like that. That God sustains the universe. But the problem is, if you notice with Garrity too, when he brought up Porphyry's objection to, or point to the bishop at that time, I forget his name. It's not what is God is the question, but who is Lord? What a profound. Because the Greek God, even if you could allow secondary causation, sustainer of the universe, even creator, is not intimately, it's not Lord. It's not a lawgiver. A person gives laws. And the Lord rules over in an active, personal, intimate way. So you really do get this kind of impersonal, like, you have to, with evolution, say that God is not intimately and personally involved in his creation. He's just sustainer. But that's not Lord. That's not the same God that we're talking about. So that's a great argument. I actually realized that. Also, the second argument I make, if theology is higher than science, so what I don't understand, I see this all the time, is people try to go to science, which can't even get the knowledge. It can't overcome the problem of induction. It can't overcome the problems of experiment, and the issues that experiments raise. It can't overcome the problem of you don't actually, if science is based on, where's my book? It's great because this opens with, you take a philosophy of science question, you'll realize all this stuff's stupid. Like, that's like, there's no way that you could actually argue for this in any justified way. For example, Chalmers goes over seeing is believing. That science is this kind of seeing, and he critiques that no, you always bring paradigms and ideas and thought. There is no simple seeing. And he uses these kind of Gestaltian images and optical illusions and stuff like that. The very notion of scientific fact and observational statements that facts, strictly speaking, aren't out there. Facts are propositional. And so, again, you have a disconnect between, there's no way to, and this is, you'll see this in epistemology, there's no way to actually bridge the gap between non-logical, non-semantic, non-doxaxic things, i.e. the out there, the empirical out there, and facts, propositions, doxaxic, i.e. beliefs, logical propositions and stuff like that. They're opposite categories. This is the problem with empiricism. So I can't even match those two in science. The problem of subjectivity, that it's always couched into, you can't get an objective view on all these, right? Number 3 or 4, where am I at? The problems of falsificationism, and that even Proper's thing doesn't solve the problems. Kuhn's paradigms, how paradigm shifts happen is not based really on rational, logical, or epistemic reasons. Number 5, the indeterminacy of data thesis, the Quine-Duhem. I could create multiple like contradicting sciences that all fit the appearances and observations, but they can't all be true. So what I'm trying to say is, at best, it's epistemically shaky and obscure. So what do people do? So let's say something in scripture, it's not okay, it's not perfectly clear. What you don't do, like Aristotle says, is, well, if something's unclear, go to something that's even more obscure. And that's what people do all the time. Like, well, let's go to science. Like, science is all over the place. Like, look at all the epistemic like, why would you go to something that's the most epistemically shaky to get to something that's to elucidate what's far less shaky? I think that's a great. And so the epistemic, what's a phrase I want to use for this? The epistemic status that I gave to science and my idolization of it was dethroned. Like, I was like, I'm gonna use that. Like, now I love science. I think it definitely, I can describe reasons how to construct better sciences and other, when it's corrupted, when the problems, the kind of instrumental use of it, these various things that, like, I'm not saying we should abandon science, but it has to be contextualized in the terms of the things that I presuppose. But I think first and foremost, I just started acquiring, like I mentioned, this guy. I really do believe in an intuitive form of knowledge. And obviously, that can be a gift. It, some people are blessed with that, some people really struggle with that. I believe that um, that can be developed further through virtues. This is why we have a type of virtue epistemology, and that vices can make it more difficult to discern the truth intuitively. Um, but that's something that I learned that I wasn't quite aware of until I spent time in Orthodoxy, the value of intuitive knowledge. And that comes really from, soaking up the life and ethos and phronema of the church. And so, as I brought up uh, in the stream yesterday, referencing what was an excellent question from a student last year in a logic class when we were going over inductive arguments, and how do you identify whether an inductive argument is strong or weak, cogent or uncogent? And strong and weak is basically um, the premises are strong enough to support that the conclusion is probably true. Because remember, at best, induction is probabilistic. So the things that's probably not true, so the premises are not enough, they're weak, or it's strong. It's so the student asked, well, how do we know when an argument, like, what she was looking for, like a quantitative kind of mechanism or something to determine, like, now obviously this is not it doesn't mention that in the book. It doesn't go, and here's the method that you use to determine whether premises are strong enough to support that it's probably or likely to be true. Just states it. And I'm like, yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I said, I think here's another example where you start off intuitively. So I put up two arguments, one that's probably not true and one that probably is true. And then I'm like, how do you know that? And none of the students can actually get into the details it's just like, well, you just see it, right? And I'm like, that's interesting. So it's a level of intuition. And maybe later you find out more details, which you explain, but like there's a type of knowledge there. It's like I can clearly see that's a strong probabilistic argument, and this one isn't. Now, I'm sure you can get to areas, and I brought this up, where I'm like, in the middle, well, there's going to be areas that it's like, I don't know, like that's confusing. I don't know if that's a strong or a weak one. It isn't discrete. There's a kind of a continuum, obviously, but start with the extremes. So likewise, right? I think with these issues, intuitively, when you start soaking up the phronema and ethos of the church, it's like, I know. It's the same reason why I didn't build my my conclusion on these philosophical theories of reference and Garaby's paper to know that Muslims and Christians don't worship the same God. I knew that in my heart. I think most people do. Now I can get into the details. The philosophy helps be like, oh, well, this explains why. And it helps to defend against their position. But I started with the kind of intuition. Why? Because I soaked up the phronema of the church. That's how we know a lot of things. And I think the same thing happened with evolution. It's just, the more I soaked up, I'm like, I just know it's not true. And now I can get into some of the details philosophically and defend that. But Granny Book 499, what are your tips for setting up an icon corner and creating prayer rules that suits your personal needs? Love your work. Thank you. Well, first of all, you don't set your own prayer rule. Your priest does. You talk to him and ask him to give you a prayer rule. They'll give you one based on what. And a rule is the bare minimum. My prayer rule that's established to me is basically the Trisagion, the Our Father, and those 3 morning prayers, and the Creed. Everything else. Now, notice I do all the prayer. When I do these every morning with you guys, that's not my prayer rule. My prayer rule is what I just listed. Those are the additions. And I try to, but I don't fail, Father says, if like, oh, there's one day you don't do all 12 of these prayers, because your prayer rule is the kind of basic foundation on which everything else is built on. Something you can commit to that I'll never break this. And if you do, you mean you go to confession and stuff like that. I broke my prayer rule. I didn't do. But it's something that you could tell the priest, I could do this small kind of rule every morning, every evening. That's my rule. Everything else is a rule, right? Everything else is not the rule. It's additional benefits. As far as an icon corner, I don't know. I let my wife, like, she's great at that kind of stuff. So she set up. We have our patron saint, Slava of our home, Saint Pantaleon, the healer, because my wife was healed. We have my saint to the left, Saint Ananias the apostle, and then the Theotokos to the right. In the living room is like the big prayer corner, and I don't know, like, I let my wife set it up, like, because she's good at stuff like that. So, Jonathan 499, is it safe to say EOS use induction to verify divine revelation, like criteria? We all use induction. But to verify divine revelation, I don't think divine revelation's known inductively. Maybe identifying instances of where, I mean, everything's divine revelation, and it's divine revelation to the human heart first and foremost. But it's in creation, and so I don't believe that's known inferentially. I mean, you can make inferences, but I believe it's a direct. I believe that it's one of the exceptions as far as things that are known immediately and directly, right into the heart. Um, Whereas in the West, you have to deduce or make inductions and stuff like that. Okay, let's see. Somebody asked too, is it a priori? Because even the, and it's like, doesn't seem like it goes into either one of those kind of categories because it's in sense experience, in history. Um, so I can't say it's completely a priori. However, arguments about that are take on sometimes something akin to the way that, if I was arguing tag deductively or something like that, like kind of at a meta level, it has kind of the appearance of uh, and similarities to a priori arguments, but it's really not because they're not the two spheres aren't separated. So I think it doesn't really fit to put them into either. Is that induction though? I don't. Post hoc verify whether. I mean, think about like the way that you know something's a demonic deception is possibly twofold through virtue, through acquiring the faith. Um, I don't know if it's inductive because if I had a piece of item like a proposition, they put it in a proposition, um, wouldn't it be deductive and be like, well, this, I'm taking it, let's say, form another proposition that like this is false doctrine. This had the appearance being true doctrine, but they don't match. Therefore, I would say, if anything, it would seem more similar to deductive. But primarily, what allows us to be able to put that together correctly would be virtue. So it's kind of beyond those kind of categories, but I would think it's more deductive. But it also requires experience. Experience of the good. So it's just I don't know if those it's helpful to put those in those categories. It's like okay, there's elements of this and that and all, like in both of them. All right, let me see if we have any other super chats I didn't read. Notice too with that goofus. Um, Nobody ever addresses the argument. I brought this up with Garby. I'm like, you watch the debate. They never addressed my arguments. And by the way, I was going to put on there, I'll tell you how I won. Their position was it's impossible that the referent, they didn't just say the referent, it refers to this, it's impossible that be otherwise. That the reference fix in both groups. What did I get them to admit at the end in my closing statement? It's possible. Therefore, I won the debate. Like, it's super easy. That's what they said. Oh, I'd be interested to see. Yeah, I guess it is possible. But I'd have to see before they conceded that it is true. They'd have to see a theory developed in more detail, which is fine. But like, they just conceded the debate because my thing is just to argue to get you to relinquish your position that it's impossible. So if I get you to say the opposite of impossible, it's possible, then I won the debate. Like, there you go. But the argument was never. Basically, you had all I really heard was kind of a fallacy of incredulity. I don't understand how mental objects are different than empirical objects. It's like, sounds like a you problem. I ain't my problem. Like, I understand how it works. I gave countless examples, right, of these things that are different. And I love that Garby brought up, too, the problem, and this is why Trent Dortry took the hooded man paradox in the right. He thought it was proving his position, and I said it refutes your position. The Superman Clark Kent analogies refute your position. Why? Because you can it puts you in a position that we can know. I'm standing behind it. I already have the knowledge in the scenario that Clark Kent is Superman. I can empirically investigate that too, even if I didn't know that. The hooded man paradox assumes that we know the hooded man is John's father. We're on the other side. You can't first of all, you can't empirically investigate the Trinity and get behind like these situations. So you can't, without begging the question, say, well, we know that it's referring to the same thing. That's what's in question, you stupid idiots. You can't use what's in question to prove your case. What's the matter with you? That's the essential distinction between you. But we don't know on that. And because we don't know, you can't use the analogies where that you actually can know that Clark Kent and Superman are the same, or the hooded man is John's father. Yeah, poor guy. I don't understand why he crashed out like on when didn't you just mention like whatever the guy's handle was that he put in there is like, and is so I think what's going on with Trent, you know, his history at Baylor and stuff like that, like given what happened, you know, God help him, like hopefully it seems like he was genuinely repentive of, but obviously like I doubt he'll ever get a job as a philosophy professor. So I think he's trying to clout chase and get online and make, and he's a smart guy, like he knows his stuff. But I think what's becoming more apparent as he's going on all these different shows, he's pretty far off from the Roman Catholic ideas, which is becoming more apparent. I think that's what you probably saw cleave to in Antiquity, that it's like, you know, he's defending Skittles. And then he went on other show, was defending stuff that like not even Roman Catholic doctrines. So that's why accountability. Well, it's a problem with the academics too. You know, even in Orthodoxy, that they think there's oftentimes Orthodox academics. I had it. Yeah, forgive me. I had to get rid of it. Well, I know better. I'm obviously a PhD. You see, then I had no accountability. Somebody to call me out. Wasn't under anybody to be like, that's not what. So think about this. Here's another reason why not only do I believe the position is true, even though there's no ecumenical council that defines the dogma of, you know, Muslims and Christians don't worship the same God. I believe it's the phronema and it's the consensus of the fathers. But not only that, I'm under authority. and my authorities, it's not infallible, but it's the mode of which I operate under. Um, my authorities tell me, my priests, my bishops say we don't. So it's another reason why, I'm accountable. I would be corrected if I went out and said, "Oh, we do," and took their position. Um, so I put myself under that authority and correct that I'd be willing to be corrected. Trent doesn't have that. That's why he's saying stuff that's clearly not even Catholic. So I think that's another thing I didn't add, in our discussion. But I'm like, that's another actual. It's a reason. It's not. I'm not saying it's an infallible reason, but certainly a good justification. Atheist, yeah. Try them all, free Midwest. Find the best parish and best priest and go. I always encourage, don't ever, if you're lady, think jurisdictional. There's no base jurisdiction. They all have problems. Um, if they're canonical, they're canonical. And so all that matters to you is you have a good communion and a good priest. And you're free. You're baptized into Christ, the body of Christ, the Orthodox Church, not a jurisdiction. As I always joke, you guys don't have. Where is it? 1 second. Now this is kind of a joke. This is Father Russell, but there's a truth in it. You know what these are called? Cuffs. It's part of the priesthood. I am cuffed to an altar, not in a bad way, and a bishop, a jurisdiction. We're in the Lord's army. We're not free to. Well, I'm going to go over to this jurisdiction now, and without the authority of releasing us and being received. You guys don't have these. And this applies even for minor clergy that aren't part of the priesthood. So the deacons, the presbyter, and the bishop are part of the priesthood. And in that sense, they're all priests and have in different ways. Minor clergy, readers, and subdeacons are not part of the priesthood. In no way are they priests. They don't have cuffs. They're not ordained on the altar. There's hierothesia, but no hierotonia. They don't offer anything. It's part of what it means to be priest in Greek is the one who offers. So I offer, even the deacon offers with, right? He literally holds up the chalice and patens when the priest says, "Thine own of thine own we offer unto thee for all and on behalf of all." I can't consecrate, but I offer with the priest, and there's something similar to even the priest itself cannot consecrate without the bishop, right? So I'm not actually consecrating. The priest is consecrating. I'm offering the consecration through the authority of the priest and the bishop. And actually, I'm not cuffed to the priest. I'm cuffed to the bishop. Which is actually different than the presbyter. So, anyways, all that's to say is even readers and subdeacons are free to go to another jurisdiction. They don't have to get a release. You guys don't have to get a release. So I wouldn't worry about jurisdictions. Till you become part of the priesthood, you don't have to think about that stuff. So you think about what's the best parish and priest for me? You're baptized into Orthodoxy, not a jurisdiction. You just go to a jurisdiction and you can. Yeah, including antiquity. I mean, the thing is, they are great apologists for Orthodoxy. They're bringing more Roman Catholics to Orthodoxy. The more they double down on this, if I was a Roman Catholic apologist, I know that that position's dogmatized. I'd be embarrassed. I would actually be like, I don't want to talk about it. Because the more I try to defend the indefensible, it's just going to push people away. Like I said, my priest told me we have 2 people leaving the Roman Catholic Church coming to become Orthodox because of the actually what they saw in the debate. They're like, we don't want to be part of that religion. So it's just like, those guys can keep it up. The more antics that they do, the more they try to defend. I mean, what did I say? One thing about Roman Catholics I think that you can see is they're just divorced from reality, what's actually going on, because they live in a autistic theological Dungeons and Dragons platonic game in their head. I call it scholasticism. But it's like, yeah, but that's not what. Yeah, but if I could argue it up in my head, then I mean then I've saved Roman Catholicism. That's just people are always gonna mess with, like, but they're divorced. They're 2 different realities here. Come on, guys. So I think that, for example, let me give you a perfect example. We knew what the late Pope Benedict believed about Skittles. We saw him pushing, right? This is called in hunting, stalking horse, where the hunter goes behind the horse up against like the prey to stalk them, and he pushes the horse, right? That's pushing the envelope to see how close he can get before he can come out and shoot and kill the prey. Well, philosophically and practically, this is kind of what the Roman Catholics do. That's what the Pope, he puts a stalking horse out, he pushes the envelope to see how people were like, can we come out now and say it? No, not yet. So I'm hiding behind the horse. Okay, so what you have to do then, because it's clear, I mean, anybody that has eyes to see can see, as scripture says, what he believed. Like, we know what he believed. This is ridiculous that we're even arguing about this. So how do you get people to look away and be distracted from what's actually happening in the Roman Catholic Church? You bring on philosophers. Well, look at my beautiful semantic theory. Well, if we take the words of the Pope and abstract it from the reality of what's actually going on, what he actually believes, I mean, can't blessing 2 couples and same-sex couples just mean this when we look away from everything else and just look at the proposition and use philosophy? And what does it really mean? And I can argue. First of all, I'd have to say, who gave you authority to argue about Roman Catholic theology? You're not a authorized theologian on. You can't judge the first see anyways by dictatus pot. Like, who sent you? As they said in the early church. Why should I take any of these people serious? They're arguing like, you have no authority and your opinion doesn't matter, and actually you're told to with humility and docility submit to whatever the statement is, not reinterpret it to, well, it actually means you can't do that. But here we get another instance with the Muslim and the Christian worshiping the same God. Like, we see what's going on. It's a perennial religion now that's actually praying with pagans. The last pope prayed on a ziggurat, for crying out loud, with pagan. Letting the Quran being read in the Vatican, kissing the Quran, praying with Muslims, saying we can't convert them. Now, we're all part of, we have more of it, and they're wrong about stuff, but we're all worshiping. We can see what's going on. So what do? You bring two philosophers on. Well, look at this really complicated, beautiful semantic theory, and watch all my word wizardry and semantic sorcery, because I don't want you to actually look there. It's an embarrassment. I think more people are seeing this. I mean, look at this guy that I blocked on Facebook. I mean, the links this guy in the mental gymnastics go to defend the indefensible. I'm like, keep going. Keep going, because people are seeing it and they're leaving your church. The other one, too, is you bring on Eric Ybarra, right, who goes into, or what was the guy that Ubi debated? And this is why I don't actually get into the historical. I think that, first of all, I'm not that great at remembering all the historical facts and documents. So Ybarra or any of these guys could bring up something and be like, actually, this saint said, I'd be like, I don't know, because my memory's not that great. I don't know if that. I stay at the level of epistemology. I'm like, it's epistemologically wrong. Like, I don't. And what was the quote that I used in one of my second to last paper or something like that? That I think is, voice of reason. Thank you. The problem just generally with people, they miss the epistemic forest, the larger issue, for the epistemic trees. So I think that's what confuses people, is they get into the historical kind of detail, like, right? Where, well, look, this, this Pope said this, and one of your saints did, like, and you get lost. You get lost in the forest, and you can't actually see that it's like the larger kind of epistemic issues, that it's Roman Catholicism itself epistemically is a defeater of its own self. Like, I don't need to go into the details of, you trying to argue that there was papal supremacy in the first millennium, right? State the generalities in your intuition. How many ex-cathedra statements were made in the first millennium? Look how hard you have to argue from your Vatican I perspective way later that there's a Vatican I papal like. So what do? They drag you down into the mud, into the forest, and the little details, and confuse you. They do the same thing with the like, learn their tactics, what they're doing. Yeah, I think there's something demonic about the true, genuine Orthodox. Not only is it like Fed run, we all know that, and a large percent of them have mental illnesses. There's something demonic about it. And the demonic tactics always use distraction. Yeah, Vatican II alone is enough to make. Good point. Look, I worked this stuff out already when I was discerning whether to become Roman Catholic, leave Protestant, and become Roman Catholic. When I was at Thomas Aquinas College, what better place to study Roman Catholicism than the most Roman Catholic college probably in the universe? I worked through all this stuff. I remember going through all the Roman Catholic. We read all the encyclicals. We were reading the Church Fathers. I had the Church Father set with my roommate in our room, working through all these issues. And I remember I'm like, I came to a decision. I'm like, there is no way. And I told them, if I ever convert, it's going to be to Orthodoxy. Mark my word. And that's what happened. And again, I think it's a hallmark of modernity, this abstractionism. You see this in science. And by the way, that was another critique of science too. What is a law of nature? Great lecture that I've done. You're going to base stuff on law, like where is a law of nature? You're not going to actually be able to find it. But all science is based on law. Science is based on fact. Where's the fact? It's not actually there. It's another abstract proposition that I can't reconcile with the empirical reality. And their arguments, Roman Catholics, are just so bad. Like, which church? Orthodox is too ethnic. So there's no Roman Catholic churches in other countries with other different ethnicities. What? Can you imagine being this deluded? Do you think that's a great argument? Well, two patriarchs walk into a bar and disagree about a math problem. How do we know which one's right? Use your mind. Oh, I got you. Using your mind's Protestant. I'll never forget. I got to make a meme about that. Getting Catholics to say using your mind to figure out how do we know something is Protestant. And they're obsessed with this. It's all about how do we know? How do we know? How do we can't know unless we have a pope, right? That just shows you're totally insane. I mean, how do we know? Like, that's a different question than how are things ecclesially and legally settled? But everything in them is obsessed with abstract propositions and epistemological questions. Notice it's not, how am I healed? It's, how do we know? Everything's, how do we know? Father Russell always talks about the difference between the East and West. I don't mean geographically. I mean this because you can be Western and Eastern at the same time. I mean the Western philosophical experiment. Knowledge becomes abstract and propositional. Once, twice removed from reality. In the East, this is distinguished, if you're like, what do you mean from, like, obviously, we mark it East and West because this originated out of those geographies, but no, you could still be Eastern and still be Western. We're talking about these ideas, where do they came from, where do they, hold on. In the East, an Easterner, knowledge is not abstract propositions, stuff written on papers and in books. It's incarnational, and it's an immediate experience. Father Russell always says, you know, when Scripture says he knew her, that's what, it's an intimate, when you know a person you see face to face, you don't, there's an immediacy. You don't put, I don't know my wife because I read her resume and work through all the propositions. So, you can see why this developed in the Latin West. This is obsession with propositions and abstract, that knowledge is abstract and propositional, first and foremost. And the real, the immanent, the incarnational is secondary. They reverse it. So that's what, and Father Russell says, what is a proposition? It's a fantasy between your two ears. It's like, it's a great way to, this is why it's insanity. But if I construct the system and I add this distinction here and put in Latin in re versus, I mean, it's just, from somebody outside seeing somebody do this, it's like, it's total insanity. Crazy. And it doesn't map onto anything. It doesn't change people's lives. It doesn't heal them. Well, the point is, yeah, what is the benefit? The benefit is they got to stay consistent, both with the dogmatic pronouncements that were made in Vatican II and the last two popes, and it follows from their natural theology. So they're trying to keep, and again, an abstract, consistent
platonic theological Dungeons and Dragons game in their head, all the things matching up and consistent. So there's a level of consistency that they're attempting. That's the benefit, and the essence is like it is no benefit. It's ridiculous. But it does come out of natural theology. And it comes, I mean, think about how blasphemous their definition of natural theology is. What the human mind alone, by the natural light of reason, can know apart from divine revelation. First of all, everything's divine revelation. Natural revelation and supernatural revelation. And natural revelation, as St. Demetrius Stanley says, is known in the context of supernatural revelation. God is the Lord, the psalmist says, who's revealed himself, not who's logically deduced from speculative armchair philosophy, from Greek metaphysical presuppositions about ontology. The one is like, and that's what they do. That's what eventually leads to this. They put on, Metropolitan Zizouis calls it ontologism, which is the Greek metaphysics, that essence, the one, is prior and more perfect than multiplicity and personhood. Orthodoxy reverses, they're reversing everything. So if that's true at the one, then yeah, you can have a generic, like, it's all this stuff kind of follows from their position. But what is interesting, as some of you bring up, this is why I don't need to go into the details. Remember, first of all, it isn't simply, let's see if I can find this. Ex cathedra statements that nobody can actually tell you how many. You'll never find them in the first millennium. So, and you can't actually you're not allowed to determine what's ex cathedra versus what's not. So that it's appealing to that like it's some epistemic first principle and give you certitude is like not gonna work. But they don't even know their own dogma. The Roman Catholic Church doesn't say that only ex cathedra are infallible, extraordinary, but also ordinary magistrate, and you have to hold to. And then there's further distinctions too of stuff that may not rise to the level of infallibility, but you can't object to. It's still binding on. All right, let me see. I want to show you something. When do you want to find it? Did I? Man, I might have screenshot. Sometimes I screenshot these things just for. Problem is, there's so many more responses to this guy that now it's getting harder to follow. Find the. Maybe it's here. I mean, I'm pulling up where Roman Catholic basically say that documents um, basically show that, yeah, it's not just ex cathedra that's infallible. All of this was like in response to this Elijah Yassi guy. Anyways, if I find it later, let's see if you guys have any more super chats or questions. Yes. Right on through Jenny. I mean, obviously you've thought through these issues. It isn't. It's exactly Desger. I knew it was in Desger. Oh, here's another one for you. They're always like, so the hill they're gonna die on is you allow contraception. I'm like, I mean, don't allow contraception, but it's ridiculous. And first of all, you do anyways. It's called natural family planning. But no, we don't allow especially like we're pretty clear on abortive. Oh, but you didn't have an ecumenical council on it defining. Well, you didn't even have a position on until what, like on some of these issues, and like in divorce. It's like, wasn't that what Ubi brought up? That if that's the stand with voice of reason, well then you just shot yourself in the foot because you didn't have a position of this like 100 years prior to 100 years ago. Again, and here's the other thing. I noticed that Roman Catholics always commit the fallacy of accident. What's fallacy of accident? Where you take a rule and you apply it to areas that's not intended to apply to. So there's in ethics or something, there's objectivity that has to do with the status of moral rules. Do we define it? Does society, or is it independent of what an individual, a group of people said? It's objective then. Then there is, is it absolute? That has to do, so something can be objective and not be absolute. Absolute means that it's applied everywhere. It has to do with stringency. Everywhere it's the same time in all places. Okay, so, for example, you have an objective rule, moral rule. You should return your property that you borrow from somebody to its rightful owner. Being an absolutist, a moral absolutist would be like, no matter what, you have to, even if your neighbor has been up on meth for a week and is now like holding his kids and wife hostage and says he's going to kill his family and everybody in the neighborhood, and he asks for his hunting rifle that you borrowed from back, and you're like, well, moral rule says I have to. That's a fallacy of accident. The papist thinks this way. So they can't ever conceive, they're almost like Kantians or something. They can never conceive of a situation when that rule wouldn't apply. So if we have a general rule against contraception, right, they think it's an own if they're like, there might be a specific situation, a non-abortive, where it's allowed under, oh, we got you. The whole divorce issue, another fallacy of accident. Yeah, generally speaking, yeah, that's not. But there's economy applied, and it's not allowing. We have no right of divorce. What it is allowing people to still be in the church and remain healed and perhaps have another marriage, even though it was a terrible thing that happened. Because why? We're not pharisaical rule worshippers. The end of the law is love. And so if applying that cancels out the teleological aim that it's meant to accomplish, then obviously it's not a law like a law that should be applied. It's self-refuting. They can't get this. So yeah, there are situations in which it's tolerated. I wouldn't say allowed because that means it's like it's sanctioned. We have a right of divorce or the right of contraception. No, there. And again, you saw with this guy, they have this arbitrary standard of what unity means, how things are solved, right, ecclesially and legally. And so they go, well, see, you don't have that. And because that's the only way in which something can be solved or known, or you can have unity, you don't have it. Well, first of all, that begs the question. Who says your arbitrary conception that you just made up is the only way that you can have unity and solve stuff legally and ecclesially? Said who? Oh, you arbitrary and begging the question. Congratulations. But you can't hold us up to a standard that's like, we don't believe that. So there's kind of a straw man that's set up, right? Oh, well, see, here's what the Orthodox position must be the Roman Catholic position. Because it's not the Roman Catholic position, therefore it's false. What a stupid trick. Most people ain't falling for that. But I find it hilarious that you dogmatized early term abortions. So all this stuff about contraception and marriage that you think that's how we know is because the Orthodox don't have this stupid rule worshiping absolutism applied everywhere in the same, and pharisaicism, legalism. Oh, it must be false. Congratulations, because you guys actually, you don't even know this, and it's in Denziger too. That's why I thought about, because they married the theology to Aristotle in his conception of when a human person actually develops, like 40 or 80, I forget, it's different for what the Aristotle's thing is, male versus female. They allowed it. They allowed early term, save a certain small period, but until just recently, if you want me to find this, I feel like it's like having a moral degenerate lecture you like Christians on morality. We see this all the time. Like, well, did you guys believe you sanctioned slavery? I actually saw that the other day. I was like, oh god, here we go. That same one. I ain't gonna let, first of all, a moral degen lecture me on, especially an atheist that can't even justify morality. But it's the same thing. It's like, I'm not gonna let a Roman Catholic give arguments and lecture me on the Orthodox Church stance on contraception and marriage when you guys actually dogmatized and allowed early term abortions. Oh, and then you change it. So the reason why I brought this up, I don't need to get into all the details and get lost in the history and stuff like that. I think you can look at history and just see, you know, almost intuitively, like, of course the Roman Catholic Church doesn't look like anything like the first millennium. But all I have to show, the system refutes itself. If you say that dogma can't change, it's infallible, and you change it, done. Like, how do you get out? Like, the only way they can get out of this is be like, well, don't look at that. Look over here, right? You see, they're notorious for doing this. I mean, how many things, it'd be interesting to get a list of how many systemic contradictions at the dogmatic level where they change their position that can't change can we find in Roman Catholicism? We only need one, but it'd be interesting to see how many we could actually get to stack up. I'm finding this Denziger real quick. So, Tristan Engelhart, he was Roman Catholic before he converted to Orthodox, and he was the Vatican's bioethicist. States he's quotes from Denziger, but he says, given the influence of Aristotelian philosophy and Roman Catholicism, especially given Aristotle's argument that the rational soul enters the body only after conception. So for the generation of animals, Aristotle says that's 40 days for males and 80 to 90 days for females. Also, in the history of animals, he says that too. So it's not just on the generation of animals, the history of animals. Beginning in the 13th century, Western theologians such as Aquinas held that early abortion was not equivalent of the taking of human life. The consequence was that in the Western canon, so now we have dogma, an early abortion was not treated as murder. From 1234 to the revision of canon law in 1917, it went into effect on May 19th, 1918. Okay, that is from Denziger, page 704. And he does qualify, save the period between 1588 and 1591. I guess that was Sixtus. That's Roman Catholicism for you. That was canon law. That's dogma. And you're going to have them lecture you like, that, well, obviously the church because your view of... First of all, that's not a defeater for... Suppose the church was wrong on, like, whatever they mean the church. Where was that where is the dogmatized statement from the Orthodox you think that we're contradicting ourselves on? What does this guy point to? AFR. What is that guy? Well, AFR says, and he lies, as one of you pointed out, he lies about that. They're liars. All for thee, none for me fallacy. It's like the Muslim, right? They try to use secular, atheistic, higher textual criticism to critique. Well, let me apply that to you. No, you can't do that. That doesn't work for me. I'm especially immune from the criticism that I'm applying to you fallacy. As the fallacy that I like to say. So, isn't that funny? And then he projects and says, that's what I'm doing to him. It assumes that we have the same ecclesiology and we settle and know things in the same way. We don't. Like, don't apply. Don't. Hey, man, don't put your trip on me. Is that what the boomer hippie would say? What would the boomer hippie say in this? Hey, man, don't put your trip on me, man. Don't lay your trip on me. But find me the oh, I found a couple people say stuff. I took it out of context. I lied about it. I don't even quote it. Doesn't mean, okay, so what? Like, somebody got something wrong? That's what Gerbian, I'm like, that's what was so stupid. Like, you're not even listening to your patriarchs. Patriarchs can't bind outside of a synod, morons. They can bind in terms of like they have like authority to like enforce stuff in terms of like jurisdictional and administrative stuff over their diocese and area or metropolia. They can't make a dogmatic pronouncement outside of the authority of a synod. They're under the authority of their brother bishops in their local synod, and then obviously bigger too. Show me where that was said on any of these issues. So all at best you can find is various people that have said maybe incorrect stuff. Well, the whole history of the church is people that have done that, even saints. Like, that's your argument? That's not our argument against you. We're looking at you dogmatized, you according to your dogma, and then you contradict it. That's what we're critiquing. I mean, absolutely no good faith with these people whatsoever. That's why Jay's like, I'm sick and tired of talking to Roman Catholic. He's done. By the way, with all due respect, there are some good Roman Catholics out there. I work with them. I don't hear, they don't behave and act like this or make these sorts of arguments. So I don't want to throw them all in the same camp. Yeah. Isn't that weird, Noah? Isn't sin kind of like that? When you're living in sin, sound like a very Protestant. Living in sin, brother. I'm freed. But you know what I mean, like serious vices and stuff like that. You think everybody's involved in that. I was younger doing drugs. I thought like, well, yeah, everybody's on drugs. Everybody must be like me. Is that kind of what's going on with the papist? Well, of course, every system's the way I see it. Of course, everything's papal. I mean, all they see is papism. There's papism. That system must be. I have to hold the same standard as. It's similar to sin. When you're in sin, you normalize it. You justify it. And part of that justification is, well, most everybody must be doing the same thing because I'm normal, and that's what normality is. So if I wasn't, I'm in trouble. I think there's psychologically something going on that's very similar. How can you ever keep consistency, Dave says. Well, they try. What you do to give the illusion, make it so complicated and distract so many people from what's obvious that it looks like it's a consistent system. Make it abstract enough, make it autistic enough, and make it super complicated and bring on a bunch of philosophers and theologians. These are not the droids you're looking for. To make it look like, wow, it's consistent. Whoa, consistency. I think that's how they try to. But look, I teach my students this fun kind of, it's a pedagogical tool to make learning fun. Imagine, when somebody asks me, like, which one's your favorite philosopher up there? I'm like, they're all wrong, every single one of them. Some more so than others. Some say some really good stuff and have some really good points, but, like, they're all wrong in different ways and stuff like that. Second of all, what am I, 5 years old? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite flavor of the ice cream? I'm like, everything's like that as a kid. What's your favorite? Who's the best? Who's the favorite? What's the favorite color? What's your favorite candy? I thought we grew up, I'm like, let's get something more complicated than that. When I'm in a certain mood, sometimes I like to eat chocolate ice cream. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't even like to have ice cream. Why do I have to answer this? Who's your favorite philosopher? I don't know, like, which one do I enjoy read? Like, which one do I believe is more true than another? Like, what does that even mean? Who do I think smarter, even though they're wrong? Like, which one do I enjoy reading more, or which one have I read more? Like, all those are kind of relevant questions. Anyways, kind of funny. So, um, in light of that they're all wrong in different ways, some more than others, some more right than others, and have good points, even if they're incorrect on other stuff. I like to train my students to think about this a fun way. Well, imagine if they were all like con artists, really, really smart con artists. They're really good at arguments, fancy words, and they're going to try to confuse you. They're going to try to get you to buy a bad product, like a used car salesman, get you to buy a lemon. We need to train you to think critically like a philosophical detective and spot the con, the crime. Then when you engage, I mean, if you theoretically, played this game, that suppose he was a bad guy and he's trying to, where is he trying to con me? It actually helps you when you're reading through the text. Is this it? How do I know? And so you end up asking some basic interrogative questions that can reveal the con. That's pretty easy. How do I know that? Who said that? Where'd you get that? When is that the case? And then whatever the answer is, it play the same way. How do I know that? Where's that true? Right? All these when, how, where, who questions can reveal the con and be like, oh, let me give you a perfect example. You have this beautiful theory about justice from Immanuel Kant and political society and ethics in terms of two things that you value: autonomy and rationality. Starts to make these points. It's like, wow, this is really beautiful. The free man, free society is the one. Well, if I asked who determines that, where is that the case? Well, that would be determined whoever by the truly free and rational man. Oh, okay, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. He's free. He's rational. He's used the dictates of reason. Right? He's not impeded by. Okay. Wait, who is this? Well, you ask Kant that, and he'll say, well, whoever I say it is. Oh, got you. You almost got me, you son of a gun. Kant. The free and rational man that creates the free rational side. Who's the free rational? Well, whatever Immanuel Kant says, the free rational man. Do you see the con? How about Rawls' theory of justice and the veil of ignorance? Right? This will get us out of our biases. We'll make decisions from behind the veil of ignorance, where you don't know what you make decisions as a perfectly kind of rational, unbiased, and free person because you haven't actually had your plot and position assigned to you in life that would bias you, make you bias on these. Oh, that sounds great. Well, how do I get there? How do we get there to make these decisions? Well, it's just imaginary. Like, nobody can actually get behind the veil. But imagine if you could. It's like, 2 times! You almost got me. It's a distraction. Look at this beautiful theory that That's awesome, dude. Where can I find it? It doesn't exist. It's in my mind. Well, how do I get that? Well, you can't. It's just, but imagine if you could. It would be beautiful, wouldn't it? You'd know everything. But you can't get there. It doesn't exist. It's gone. Not this time. It's Jonathan Frakes. Oh, we made this one up. Not this time. Totally false. So you got to do the same thing with these guys too, right? It's like that's what they're doing. They're doing like spot the con. And there's some simple techniques that people, once you get this, that's like this is what people tend to do, and you get good at it. Like the more experience you have working critically through, asking these kinds of questions, and playing spot the con game, you'll figure it out. Be like, hold on a second. Let me call you right back. This is our dear brother, Custom. Call you in 5 minutes. How about that? We'll end because I really want to talk to him. Is that all right? He's our dear brother that was in he's working with the Pantheon with the establishing the monastery and stuff like that, and all the help. I need to end the stream. Okay, got it. All right, let me see if we have any more super chats. Joshua, I might try to call you at 2 if you're still in the chat. I promise you I'll call you today. Yeah, we already addressed the don't think about jurisdictions, just go to a mall, find the best priest in parish. I don't remember what I said. Bad, bad. What was that? I don't remember. We have cat TV on in the background. Maybe that's what it's like. Birds. Also, my computer's making noises. What would a Protestant say? Found a Bible-based church. Are there anybody that advertises out there like we are the non-Bible based church? I would say that. Orthodoxy would say that. We are not a Bible based church. Father Russell always says that. We're the church the Bible's based on. Ha ha. You're Johnny come lately? You have to say that. The church is what the Bible's based on, the Orthodox Church. So maybe that's not for you. If your criteria is to find a Bible-based church, we're not it. You don't want to join us. Because we're the church the Bible's based on and off of. Yeah, it's Jared. Jared's calling. I gotta be a lot cooler if you did, man. Oh, the book Insight? It's a good book. It's hard. All right. Yeah, go ahead. Go raid Posh. I want to make sure I didn't miss any super chats. I want to say thank you for all the supporters. If you haven't subscribed, please do. See Austin subscribe. And thank you, Cleve to Antiquity. Good to see you. Dave Philippian and Noah Strong and Grammy Boy and Jeb all donated today. So thank you. God bless you guys. May the Lord keep you and give you strength and protection. And pray for St. Peter's Monastery. And till next time, God bless, guys. Bye-bye.